let's dive into this Pi Network thing. It's been all over the place, right? This whole idea of bringing crypto to like everyone. And they're saying you can mine it right from your phone. So no matter if you've been following crypto forever or just starting out, I think there's something pretty interesting here for all of us.
Yeah, I think that accessibility is a big part of the appeal. Pi Network's really aiming to make crypto, well, simpler. Get rid of all those complicated things that can scare people away. It's definitely different from, say, Bitcoin mining, which uses so many resources.
It's certainly creating a buzz, that's for sure. Especially with that, what do they call it? The global consensus value, something like $314,159
Yeah.
for Picoin. But let's rewind a bit before we get too ahead of ourselves. Pi Network, it was started by Stanford grads, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes, you're right. Dr. Nicholas Koukalis and Dr. Cheng Liaofan, they both have some pretty impressive backgrounds at Stanford. And they launched Pi Network with this idea of making crypto more inclusive, more user-friendly.
Okay, so the origin story checks out. Sounds legit. But I gotta say, mining crypto on a phone, no special equipment needed, it almost feels like, I don't know, too good to be true. Can you break down how that actually works?
Sure thing. So it uses what's called the Stellar Consensus Protocol, SCP for short. And unlike Bitcoin, which relies on proof of work, tons of computing power, SCP is designed to be lightweight, use less energy. So it relies on this network of trusted nodes to validate transactions. And that's what lets it run on everyday devices, like your smartphone.
Gotcha. So instead of all that energy-intensive competition for blocks, Pi Network's all about building up this network of trust, huh? I can see how that makes it more accessible. But maybe this is me being skeptical. Doesn't that raise some concerns about, decentralization? I've heard some critics say that relying on these trusted nodes could make the network vulnerable to control or even manipulation.
You're right to bring that up. It's a valid point. Decentralization is like the heart of cryptocurrency, and the Pi Network team knows that. While the, what is it called? The enclosed mainnet they have now relies on this curated network of nodes, they're actively working on making it more decentralized as they move towards the open mainnet launch. The idea is to gradually open up how nodes are run to the wider community. That way, no single entity has too much power over the whole network.
So it's a work in progress, but with decentralization as the end goal.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears to where Pi Network stands right now. They launched their mainnet back in 2021, right?
Yep. Late 2021, they launched what they call the enclosed mainnet. It's basically a live blockchain, so users can mine Picoin, but it has limited functionality right now. Kind of like a beta test, you could say.
Ah, so that explains why I haven't seen Picoin listed on like Binance or any major exchanges.
Exactly. Listing on exchanges can only happen after they switch to the open mainnet, and the PyCore team is taking their time with that, making sure security and scalability are top priorities.
Makes sense to be cautious. But it does make you wonder, what can people actually do with their Picoin during this enclosed mainnet phase? If you can't trade it, what's the point of mining it?
That's where building a strong ecosystem comes into play. The PyCore team's pushing for the development of apps and platforms that actually use Picoin within this enclosed network. Think of it as creating a self-contained economy where Picoin has real-world use even before it hits the open market.
Interesting. So they're creating value and utility from within, not waiting for external validation.
Precisely. It's about fostering a feeling of community ownership and showing what Picoin can do as a medium of exchange.
Okay, I'm following you. So while they work towards the open mainnet launch, they're building this foundation for Picoin to thrive in its own little ecosystem.
You got it. And this ecosystem's already starting to take shape. You're seeing marketplaces pop up where users can buy and sell stuff using Picoin, social platforms too, and even games that give you Picoin rewards.
So it's not just about hoarding Picoin and hoping it goes up in value. You can actually do stuff with it, even at this early stage. They're really trying to show what Picoin can do in the real world before it's even widely tradable.
Exactly. It's all about giving Picoin a tangible value, encouraging people to use it within the community. It builds momentum towards that open mainnet launch.
I see. So building a strong internal economy is like a stepping stone to broader market acceptance. That's a different approach than what we usually see with crypto.
It is, yeah. And we'll have to see how successful it'll be. But one thing's certain, they're getting a lot of attention and shaking things up in the crypto world.
All right, that's a good segue to our next topic, Picoin's potential value. We've all heard about that global consensus value, or GCV, that crazy number, $314,159.
Right. But it's important to remember that the GCV isn't an actual market value. It's more symbolic. It represents what the community hopes PiCoin will become.
So it's not a guarantee. What will actually determine PiCoin's value once it's out in the open market?
Well, the basic principles of supply and demand are going to play a big role, obviously. But I think even more important is how useful PiCoin is within that ecosystem they're building. The more people use it for real transactions, the more demand there'll be, and that could drive up the value.
Makes sense. So the strength of their ecosystem, the number of apps, the volume of transactions,
Yeah.
all that contributes to PiCoin's perceived value.
Exactly. That's why their focus on building this robust ecosystem, even now in the enclosed mainnet phase, is so crucial. It's about setting the stage for a thriving Pi economy, one that can sustain and potentially increase the value of PiCoin over time.
Okay, so the GCV is more of a hopeful target. PiCoin's real value will come from its real-world use and how strong that Pi network ecosystem becomes.
Exactly. And that's something we'll dive deeper into as we continue exploring Pi Network.
Looking forward to it. But before we move on, there's one more thing I wanted to touch on. We've talked about Pi Network's commitment to making crypto accessible. But there's also a lot of talk about security measures, things like KYC verification. Can you explain how that fits into their vision of inclusive cryptocurrency?
Sure. KYC stands for Know Your Customer. It's a pretty standard process in finance. It's about verifying the identity of users, which helps prevent fraud and make sure they're following regulations.
So it's all about building trust and transparency within the network.
Exactly. And while it might seem kind of counterintuitive to have such a strict verification process in a system that's supposed to be accessible, it's really important for Pi Network to be seen as legitimate in the long run.
I see. They're trying to balance ease of access with the need for security and, playing by the rules.
Right. And it's worth noting that KYC verification isn't unique to Pi Network. It's becoming more common in the crypto world, especially for platforms that want to work with traditional financial systems.
So it's more about aligning with industry standards and making sure the project can succeed in the long term.
Exactly. And while some users might find the KYC process a bit of a hassle, it's a crucial step towards building a sustainable and trustworthy platform.
Okay, that clears things up. So Pi Network is taking a multifaceted approach, focusing on accessibility, building community, developing that ecosystem, and implementing security measures like KYC. It's a lot to wrap your head around, but it's definitely shaping up to be an interesting ride.
It really is, and there's so much more to uncover as we dig deeper into Pi Network.
Well, I'm ready when you are. We've covered a lot. Yeah. From how Pi Network started to its current state and the potential value of PiCoin, but we've just scratched the surface.
True. In part two, we'll get into the exciting potential of the Pi Network ecosystem. We'll look at the challenges they're facing and what possibilities lie ahead.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into Pi Network. We've laid out the basics, the origin story, the big vision, all that. But now I'm really curious to see this Pi Network ecosystem in action. We keep talking about these apps built on Pi, these platforms. Can you give some actual examples? What's out there?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So let's start with the Pi browser. That's like your portal into this whole ecosystem. It's not just for, browsing the internet. It's designed to be a platform for decentralized applications too. You can access a marketplace where Pi is used for trading, social media platforms running on the Pi blockchain, even games with Pi rewards built right in.
Whoa, so they're creating like a mini internet inside Pi Network itself.
You got it. It's all about building this environment where developers can come up with new things and users can experience what PiCoin can actually do right now.
So it's not just a waiting game for Pi to hit the big exchanges. There's a whole economy bubbling up within Pi Network already. What do you see as the most promising stuff happening in this ecosystem?
One area that's got people really excited is DeFi, decentralized finance. There are projects being built on Pi that are trying to reinvent traditional financial services. Things like lending and borrowing, but in a decentralized, transparent way, and all using PiCoin as the main currency.
So instead of going through banks or, other middlemen, Pi users could potentially lend or borrow money directly from each other through these DeFi platforms.
Exactly. It's about giving power back to individuals, creating a fairer financial system.
Okay. Yeah, that's super interesting. Very forward thinking. But let's get real for a second. What are some of the roadblocks Pi Network might hit, when it comes to actually realizing this vision of a Pi-powered everything?
Well, scalability is a big one. As more users join, more apps get developed. They need to make sure the tech behind it all can handle it, without slowing things down or compromising security.
It's like building a bridge that needs to hold more and more weight as the community grows.
Yeah, good analogy. And another hurdle is attracting developers, keeping them engaged. You need a wide variety of apps and services to make a truly robust ecosystem. So Pi Network has to give developers the right tools, incentives, support to make them want to build on their platform.
Makes sense. There are a lot of blockchain platforms out there. It's competitive.
Definitely.
What about the users themselves? How can they help make the Pi Network ecosystem successful?
I'd say active participation is key. Using the Pi browser, checking out those apps and platforms, giving feedback, all that helps shape the direction of the ecosystem. And of course, engaging in transactions within the network, buying and selling stuff, that shows how PiCoin can be used in the real world.
So it's a team effort. Developers, users, the PiCore team, everyone working together.
Exactly. It's about that sense of community ownership, a shared goal, which has been a big part of Pi Network from the start.
Speaking of community, I wanted to circle back to something we touched on earlier, mining on smartphones. It's a super unique part of Pi Network, but it's also caused some debate. Some people say it's more about user engagement than true decentralization.
It's a valid point. The current system, with those trusted nodes, does raise questions about how decentralized it truly is. But it's important to remember Pi Network is still a work in progress. The team's been open about their plans to gradually decentralize how nodes are run as they get closer to the open mainnet launch. And they've stressed that smartphone mining isn't just about tapping a button, it's about contributing to the security and consensus of the network through something they call security circles.
So it's not just about personal gain. Users are actually helping to secure the network. How do these security circles work?
So basically, each user creates a security circle by picking a few people they trust from their network. These circles form this web of trust across the whole Pi network, which makes it a lot harder for, bad actors to mess with the consensus process.
So it's using those social connections to boost security. That's pretty clever.
Yeah.
But what happens to this whole mining thing once the open mainnet launches? Will people still be able to mine Pi on their phones?
That's still up in the air. The PiCore team's looking at different options to reward users for their contributions. While keeping the network secure and preventing it from becoming centralized, they've mentioned things like staking, where users can earn rewards by holding and locking up their PiCoin to help support the network's consensus.
So mining might change, or they might add other mechanisms, but the core idea of rewarding users for their contributions will probably stay. It's good that they're thinking ahead and adapting.
Definitely. Being able to adapt is super important in the crypto world. Things change so fast.
All right, let's talk about the big question, PiCoin's future value. We've talked about that GCV, that aspirational target. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Do you think PiCoin has a shot at reaching, significant value once it hits the open market?
To be honest, it's impossible to say for sure. The crypto market is so volatile, there are a ton of factors that can affect a coin's price. But Pi Network does have some unique advantages that could work in its favor.
Okay, I'm listening.
First off, the size of their community is huge. Millions of users are already involved with Pi Network, and that creates this potential network effect, which could drive adoption and demand for PiCoin once it's easily tradable.
Right, a big active user base is a good thing in crypto.
Definitely. Another advantage is their focus on building that real-world ecosystem we talked about. By showing how PiCoin can be used for everyday transactions, they're creating value that's not just based on speculation.
They're putting in the work, not just relying on hype.
Exactly. And that could be what sets Pi Network apart from a lot of other crypto projects. If they can bridge that gap between the crypto world and the mainstream economy, the potential for PiCoin to increase in value is pretty big.
It's a bold vision, and it won't be easy. They're up against some serious challenges like scalability and figuring out all the regulatory stuff.
Yeah,
But they're also shaking things up, which is what makes Pi Network so interesting.
I agree. Whether they achieve everything they set out to do is still unknown, but they've definitely started a conversation and captured people's imaginations.
Even if PiCoin doesn't hit that crazy GCV number, Pi Network has already made an impact. They've made crypto more accessible and brought together this global community.
Definitely. And that impact could change the whole crypto landscape, push the industry towards being more inclusive and focused on real-world use.
That's a big idea. We've explored the potential of the Pi Network ecosystem, the hurdles they face, and what could influence PiCoin's value down the line. But there's one crucial thing we haven't really talked about: how to navigate this world safely and responsibly.
That's an important point. Anytime you're dealing with crypto, especially a project that's still developing like Pi Network, you have to be aware of the risks and protect yourself. We'll dive into all that in part 3. Give our listeners some practical tips and advice to make smart decisions and stay safe in the world of Pi Network.
Okay, welcome back to the final part of our Pi network journey. We've really gone deep on this, huh? From the tech behind it to this ambitious idea of a Pi-towered ecosystem.
Hmm.
But now, let's get practical. How do we actually navigate this whole Pi network world safely and responsibly?
Yeah, that's a crucial question. Anytime you're dealing with cryptocurrency, especially something like Pi Network that's still under development, you got to be careful, aware of the risks, and know how to protect yourself.
So let's talk about those risks. What should our listeners be looking out for? What are the red flags?
One of the biggest things to watch out for is fake wallets and exchanges. Websites or apps that try to look like the official Pi Network platform, they're
Hmm.
designed to trick people into giving up their private keys or sending their Pi coin to, well, basically scammers.
So, like a digital wolf in sheep's clothing. How can our listeners avoid falling for that?
Always, always double check those URLs. Make absolutely sure you're on the actual Pi Network website or using their official app. And never, ever share your private keys with anyone, no matter how legit they seem. Those keys are like the master password to your Pi holdings.
Okay, that's a good one to remember. Guard those keys carefully. What other kinds of scams are out there?
Phishing is another big one. Scammers might send emails or messages that look like they're from Pi Network, trying to get you to click on bad links or give away personal information.
So be suspicious of any messages that seem off or that you weren't expecting. If in doubt, go to the official Pi Network website or app to double check.
Exactly. And be cautious of anyone promising crazy returns or putting pressure on you to invest a lot of money. There's no get-rich-quick scheme in crypto. It's a volatile market, and every investment has risks.
Right. Like they say, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Exactly. Do your research, take your time, don't rush into anything.
Okay, so we've covered the don'ts. Now let's talk about the positive side. What can our listeners do to, really get the most out of Pi Network while staying safe and informed?
I think one of the best things is to get involved with the Pine Network community, join their forums, participate in discussions, share your thoughts, learn from others. It's a great way to stay updated on what's happening, get help if you need it, and contribute to the whole ecosystem.
Kind of like a giant brain trust, everyone sharing their knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the Pi Network community is really passionate and supportive. You can find answers to your questions, meet other Pi enthusiasts, even get involved in projects that are shaping the platform's future.
Sounds like a good way to make the most of the Pi Network experience.
Definitely.
What other proactive steps would you recommend?
Take some time to explore the Pi browser, get familiar with the apps and platforms they're building. That's where you can see PiCoin being used in the real world, even now in this enclosed mainnet stage. Try out different apps, give feedback to the developers, get a feel for how it all works.
So get in there, get your hands dirty, see how PiCoin is being used in practical ways.
Exactly. And by using the ecosystem, you're not just benefiting yourself, you're helping Pi Network grow and develop.
Makes sense. A win-win. One thing that's been in the back of my mind throughout our conversation, Pi Network wants to make crypto inclusive, accessible to everyone. But they also have these security measures like KYC verification, which some people might see as a hurdle. How do those two things go together?
It's definitely a balancing act. On one hand, they want to open up crypto to anyone, no matter their tech skills or how much money they have. But on the other hand, they also have to make sure the network is secure, follow the rules, and prevent scams.
So finding that middle ground between accessibility and security.
Yeah, exactly. And even though the KYC process might seem like an extra step, it's a crucial one to build trust and make sure Pi Network is seen as legitimate, especially as they move towards the open mainnet and wider adoption.
Like building a house, you need a strong foundation to support the whole thing.
Perfect analogy. KYC verification is part of that foundation. It's about trust and accountability.
All right, I think I'm getting it. We've covered so much in this deep dive, from the tech stuff to the potential and the risks. Any last words of wisdom for our listeners before we wrap up?
Stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. Pi Network's always changing. There's always something new to learn. Don't be afraid to ask questions, think critically, and form your own opinions.
Good advice. It's all about being an active part of this whole journey.
Absolutely. And one last thing to remember. Pi Network has the potential to be groundbreaking, but it's important to be a bit skeptical, think things through, do your research, weigh the pros and cons, and make decisions that work for you.
That's a perfect way to end our exploration. We've journeyed through the world of Pi Network, from its early days to its big dreams. We've looked at the tech, the potential, the challenges, and the risks. And hopefully we've given our listeners the knowledge and tools they need to navigate this exciting but sometimes complicated world.
We've certainly covered a lot. And as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with a thought. What if Pi Network actually achieves its vision? A world with inclusive, accessible, user-friendly cryptocurrency. What kind of impact could that have?
Wow, yeah, that's a good question. The future's always uncertain, but the possibilities are huge. So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep that sense of wonder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into